Okay, let's have a look at a very important round 4 game, Ukraine against Poland, on board 1 of that 4-board match. Ivanchuk was playing against Radoslaw Wojtaszek, a 27-1-7, so it's a clash of the titans. Ivanchuk 2-7-6-9, so both players over 2700. Ivanchuk kicks off with c4. Remember, he might have been feeling a bit bruised, blundering earlier in the tournament. People were hoping that it wouldn't affect his tournament too much, because he's an absolutely brilliant player when he's playing at his best. Okay, black played knight f6 after knight c3 e6, and we saw after d4 a Nimzo-Indian, bishop b4 pinning the knight, knight f3, and now c5, and white simply here supported the d4 pawn with e3. Okay, he's closing in his own bishop for a moment. Black's next move looks to be designed to exert more pressure on e4 to put the bishop usually here, but maybe here as well. Queen c2, and now black plays c takes d4. And note, this is shifting this pawn along and creating a potential pawn majority on this side of the board, on the queen side. After e takes d4, look out for this pawn majority which might be on the cards now. Bishop b7, a3. The bishop doesn't exchange on c3 here, goes back. And in mind with this pawn majority, white's next move looks very logical, to play bishop e3 here to support the idea of c5, and then maybe b4 later. The downside, it would be giving up d5 control a bit. But actually black now kind of puts a pawn on d5, making c5 perhaps even more attractive in some respects. So we see c5, and this pawn majority really is more apparent here in this position. Black played bc, and we saw d takes c5. So we have a 3-1 pawn majority now. After castles, forget about routine bishop move now, just b4. And it already looks a little bit dangerous, this situation, for things like b5 and c6. It's a bit squashy for black on the queen side. Knight g4 now, and perhaps surprisingly, Ivanchuk decided he didn't mind an extra pawn island in his position and to give up the dark square bishop here. He just plays bishop d3, inviting knight takes e3. Knight takes e3 was played, and white is not tempted here for bishop takes h7. Let's see, in this position f takes e is given as a stronger move. I think this might just be drawing this move. If king h8 takes g6, forcing basically this situation. Okay, it's not so clear cut, but anyway, that was rejected for just f takes e3. Now black plays h6 to get out of the way of this battery. White castles, knight d7, and now e4. And okay, e4 is threatening to isolate potentially black's d pawn, and black didn't want that vulnerability. Not only that, f5 control be increased if this pawn is being used to recapture. So white dissolved the situation here with d takes e4, but leaving white with better quality, some better quality pieces here. The queen is nicely centralized now, and I don't know why, but entirely why, maybe black wasn't content to try and defend this position. It looks a little bit menacing, the 3-1 pawn majority here, but was this move strictly necessary coming up next? Black radically got rid of the pawns with knight takes c5, sacrificing a whole knight. checking with an engine, it seems, you know, maybe this kind of position is a little bit grovelly. Bishop f6. Say bishop f6, rook ac1. Let's just follow this engine line from earlier. So queen b8. It seems, you know, one of black's assets here to try and defend the situation, the option to take on c3 and then try and get a knight to d5, or a rook to d5. So this kind of position is a bit grovelly, but maybe defensible. But you know, white has the advantage here in this scenario. So this is a very radical decision to sacrifice a knight now with knight takes c5. So what really does black get for this? Plays queen a5. Okay, the knight moves. Rook ad8. Ivanchuk plays a4 here. Rook d5. And now the knights are heading for black's king, really. The extra piece is going to make itself felt. Knight f4. Knight h5 installing itself on h5. So ominous threats already. Bishop b4. Okay, he's attacking that knight. But for the moment, the queen's on b4, so it's not a big deal at the moment. Rook a b1. Now after bishop c3, black is attacking the knight, and also the bishop's kind of defensive as well. So maybe, you know, black's thinking he could double rooks and cause some issues for white here if the knights are stumbling around. But unfortunately, this a4 turns out to be very useful for rook b5 here. Okay, so kicking the queen. And now queen e3, so dark square coordination. It looks as though some nasty stuff is on the cards here against black's king, with the extra piece, of course. Queen c4 hitting f1. That moves and pins the bishop. Rook d3 to defend the bishop. Queen f4 offering exchange of queens. That's rejected. And in fact, c3 looks very loose if that is taken here. That's possibly losing a piece because of rook b3. Let's just check this position out of interest. I think that might not be at all possible. Okay, the move played queen a2 is engine preferred. It's queen f4, knight f4, rook e3, rook b3. Okay, there's bishop. There's a technical move, bishop e5 in this position. That's nice for a skewer. And here, I mean, this kind of position, still, you know, black is a piece down. It's I assume it's convertible to a win, this position. So in the game anyway, with the queens left on, it's easier to mate black if you've got the queen and a piece up. So h4 now was played. So white's back row is a bit safer after that. Bishop b2, and now the rook doesn't have to babysit the back row. Rook c7, and it gets nasty now. Crunch time for the black king. Check, king h2, a6, and here is where things get really nasty. The dark squares are defended at the moment with this battery. So Ivanchuk first removes some defensive resources with an exchange sack. Rook takes b2, and now an interference move, and also putting more pressure on vulnerable soft spots. Knight e5 interfering with the queen, protecting f6. So the knight f6 blow is looking on the cards now, or knight g7. Of course, rook f7 or knight f7 as well. Black tries to counter attack, and of course the rook is also attacked. So rook d2, and now a crushing finish. So I wonder if you can guess white's next move if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, it's all going to run with check because white doesn't want to defend anymore. He plays knight f6 check, and in this position there's not too many choices for black. If he plays King H8, I mean, there's a beautiful move. Knight G6 check. FG. Queen takes H6 check. Takes Rook H7 mate. So these knights are really quite crushing here. So black took with G takes after check on G3. Now here again, it's all leading to a forced mate. In the game, King H7 was played, and we saw Rook takes F7, crushing tactic. Black resigned here. If he takes, then check, and then Knight takes F7 as mate. If he moves his King, then there's Queen G7 mate. Okay, and if he had gone to H8, you might ask. Knight takes F7 check. Rook takes F7, and now switching to the back row with Rook C8 is mating. Okay, so crushing finish there from Vassily Ivanchuk. But black, you know, I don't know if that was a major panic to sacrifice the piece earlier. So it seems, like the Iranian game, the opening set the pawn structure contour, and black was slightly alarmed maybe with the outcome of the opening here, this pawn majority. So one question was also earlier, is d5 a bad idea? Because it seems to be running straight into the idea of bishop e3 to create this dangerous pawn majority. Let's just check this position. d5 is not really mentioned that much by Houdini. Something like, say black did castle, can he avoid playing d5? Say h6. In fact, d6 is mentioned here, or rook e8. So I don't know if this was a step too far. d5 just seemed to give white, emphasize the trump card. And actually, from an engine point of view, you see that spark of advantage increasing on d5. In fact, cd5 is also liked, as well as c5 in this position. So that's interesting. d5 looks as though, okay, there's a slight problem here. This willing acceptance of the pawn island, maybe black had expected this bishop to move and then be able to challenge on the diagonal, or try and use his central pawn majority. So by black kind of sacrificing a little bit, sorry, white sacrificing a little bit his pawn structure by accepting another island. Actually, this is a useful grip, this pawn that's left here, for d4 and e5 control. So black never got his centre mobility that maybe he had assumed he would get in return. And in fact here, the central mobility of black is really minimised. And so maybe this led to the panic of sacking the knight. It's a radical solution. But it's instructive to see how white exploited the extra piece. Installing the knight on h5 is very nice. Okay, black didn't want the bishop to go here for the knight. So but that knight being left on h5 is really looking dangerous. And now the queen on a2 is a bad sign. It's well away from the king, as we've seen from many master games recently. This is a very bad sign to get the opponent's queen away from defending the king. But this battery here on to help defend g7 is just destroyed with the exchange sack first, interference move second, and now knight f6 is ripe, also attacking the rook. So knight f6 absolutely crushing here in this position. Game continuation. Okay, a crushing game, and so Ivanchuk is back. I think this should give him a bit of a boost, and I wonder how he will do against the Armenian team, against Levon Aronian in particular if they meet. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.